Richard Boone.
That's it.
Richard Boone. Okay.
He was a cop.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Fun Show here at Big TV. This is the October 3rd, 2016 edition of the Fun Show. And I want to begin it by wishing you all a Happy New Year. And due to its being New Year, or more properly stated, Rosh Hashanah, you only get two of us today. Our mentor and keyboard player, Mike, is off celebrating Rosh Hashanah, and the non-Jews are here tonight. So
The gentles.
the Gentiles.
The gentles.
The Goys.
Yeah.
It's the Goy Show here tonight. Anyway, I thought I would start off by mentioning a couple of the latest adventures from the Trump Freak Show. First of all, I think today, the Attorney General of New York ordered the Trump Foundation to cease and desist accepting any contributions because in essence, he has concluded that it's a fraudulent scheme. I mean, after all, he was using other people's money to pay his legal bills.
Wow, that's right.
And he bragged about it. He said, that's good business, other people's money. And speaking of
There's a play, too, other people's money.
Yeah. That was a good show. That was a Danny DeVito movie, right? Other people's money. Anyway, then next is his tax situation. The New York Times, you probably have heard, got a hold of a tax return of his from the 90s. I'm not sure exactly what year it was, but it showed that he had lost $916 million. First of all, that hardly sounds like a great businessman to me. But what it means is that in all probability, he hasn't paid any taxes in like the last 20 years. Not a penny. And I remember when Willard Romney was running for president, he released his tax returns without much of a stink or a fight. And they showed that he and Ann had paid 13% as a rate. Very low for a man of his means.
Yeah.
But he looks like a patriotic hero now.
I'm telling you.
The interesting thing is he delayed releasing his so that he could renounce his charitable contributions in order to get his taxes up to 13% so that he could claim that he had paid 13% in taxes. And so here was, well, of course, we know what Donald would say. He's a loser.
Yep.
Loser. He's not smart.
Yep.
He's not smart. I'm a genius. Talking about his being a genius, another absolute crazy person who has emerged,
Okay.
Rudy Giuliani. Yes, appropriate. Rudy Giuliani is defending Trump's taxes and calling him an economic genius for not paying any taxes for 20 years.
Well, this is another guy who cheated on his wife.
Well, they have a lot in common.
They got a lot in common.
And he said, this is an economic genius, make a far better president than a woman. This is how it boils down for Rudy Giuliani. Anybody's better than a woman. Anybody's better than a woman. Doesn't matter how ignorant he is, how much of a crook he is, he's better than a woman. And I see these interviews with people down in the South, young women, 25, 30, 35 years old, at state fairs and stuff like that. dressed up like Dolly Parton. And the interviewer says, "What do you think of this election?" "We don't want no woman to be president." Excuse me, aren't you a woman?
Yeah. It's called self-hate.
I call it self-hate.
Self-hate.
I mean, that's a double deal. You hate
Yeah.
yourself because you're a
Yeah,
woman,
well,
and you ought to hate yourself because you're a
Dumb.
cracker.
Yeah. Because you're a dumb woman.
Anyway, so here's the last one of Trump's. Very good. This one came out. This one you may not have heard yet. Mr. Trump said with great definity that veterans who suffer from PTSD are just weak. Sort of like his, I like people who weren't captured.
Yeah. This is the person who got deferred 5 times, right?
Yeah, yeah. Who never served at
Never
all.
served, yeah.
But he says that if you have post-traumatic stress syndrome, that just means you're weak. You're weak. Do you think some of these generals and admirals may want to recall
No,
their endorsement?
I don't think they will. You know why? Because it's kind of to save face. To say, well, they don't want to, because I don't think they'll want to admit they were wrong.
Oh.
That kind of a thing. So I don't think they'll want to admit that they're wrong.
All right. Well, I do find it interesting that every single general and admiral that endorsed him has never led a man in combat
We'll see.
ever.
And they would not have post-traumatic stress syndrome, so that's why
Because they never saw any combat.
they never saw anything to be stressful about.
It's very funny because, of course, Trump referred to them as the fighters, the real fighters. What are they fighting? City Hall, the Pentagon, the Budget Department?
Fighting to stay out of war. Fighting to stay out of harm's way.
Yeah. Well, there's a funny thing about the military. Usually, they're a little grumpy if they don't have a war because that's how you get promoted.
Yeah.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, as this is now October, I want to point out to you that coming up is Brookline Queso Joaquin Sister City Week in town. We're celebrating the 29th year that the town of Brookline has been in a sister city arrangement with Queso Joaquin, Nicaragua, where we have built schools and libraries and health centers and housing and done a number of other programs over time. So Sunday, October 16th, there will be a celebration of Brookline and Latin American poetry, which will take place at 1550 Beacon Street in the community room there. It's free. Families are welcome. There will be both English and Spanish poetry. Following that on Monday the 17th, there will be a program called Science on Screen, which will have a presentation by the MWRA director of environmental quality, Betsy Riley, on water quality as an issue in developed and developing countries. Anyone who knows about Sister City knows that we have been studying the water situation down there heavily for the last few years because kidney failure is the #1 cause of death.
Oh, down in this city.
In our city and in the area, the whole Pacific coast of Central America, the leading cause of death is kidney failure, and nobody knows what's causing it.
Oh, wow.
So we started doing our own research, and then we got kids from BU School of Public Health and Harvard Public Health, Harvard Med School, and eventually we leveraged an agreement with the World Health Organization. So we now have BU, the World Health Organization, and the University of Leon, Nicaragua, all together working on this problem, which is pretty good for a group of local volunteers.
Yeah, it is.
To get going. And then on October, the Science on Screen will be October 17th at 7 p.m. And the presentation will be followed by a showing of Chinatown.
Oh, okay.
Now, you're a theater person.
Yeah.
Tell me why Chinatown is appropriate.
Because it has to, the whole mystery had to do with the water, bringing water to.
Right, bringing water
Yeah.
from the Rockies to Los
But
Angeles.
see, you know what's interesting? You say theater. Too bad you guys couldn't see a production of Urinetown,
my
which is a crazy musical.
my granddaughter did Urinetown last year,
Yeah.
and
She's Sweet Sally.
I said that only my granddaughter would get me into a theater to see something called Urinetown. Her boyfriend had the lead.
I mean, I never. It's funny when it was up for Tony's, and of course because I can't get to New York, I didn't see. And someone said, Urinetown. We're going. They're saying you're in town. They just
You're in
mispronounced.
town.
That's what they're saying. Is it? No, I don't think that's what they're saying. But speaking of theater, did you know we didn't have this conversation last week? Edward Albee died
When was this?
September 16th.
No,
So
I didn't.
we didn't talk about it then. If you just asked me the question, when was this?
I did not know it.
Yeah, I was.
I did not
I
know
was
it.
surprised.
I remember going. He directed a production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Oh, really?
In Boston a number of years ago, with Ben Gazzara and Colleen Dewhurst.
Oh, wow.
And I would go see Colleen Dewhurst
Yeah.
read the phone book.
Yeah.
And I was just like you. Ben Gazzara? Ben Gazzara? It was fabulous. And it rescued the play for me from that abomination that Burton and Taylor
Yeah.
did.
Well, that's because
know?
they added all these outdoor scenes and all this other stuff that's not in the play.
Well,
But they have to do that when they make out a movie.
And it was also, particularly her performance, was at such a hysterical energy level throughout that no human being could actually survive that.
That level, yeah,
You know?
yeah.
I mean, there was no subtlety whatsoever. And one of the things I loved is I took a number of young actors I was working with at the time to the play. Colleen Dewhurst did one half of one whole scene facing upstage.
Wow.
It was phenomenal, But young actors, they either have no idea what to do or they won't take their eyes off downstage.
Yeah.
Under any circumstances, you have them walk up stage, they're looking over their shoulder, and I'm saying, sit there and watch.
Watch.
you
Wow.
know,
Amazing.
you don't have to be staring the audience in the face. I went to see Sunday in the Park with George
Oh, okay.
this past week.
That's at the ART? No.
It's at Huntington.
Huntington. Oh, okay.
Huntington. The set, the costumes, the staging of it was phenomenal.
Okay.
Absolutely phenomenal. They brought characters on stage and you thought you were looking at the painting,
Yeah.
But all said and done, I did not like.
You don't like the storyline.
Well, I didn't like the show. I'm sorry, sir, but the lead, in my opinion, couldn't sing.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, the best voice I heard up there was in a very small part, woman pushing a baby carriage.
Oh, okay.
But I'm glad I went
Yeah.
because so many parts of the production were excellent. But what was not excellent was the lead.
Yeah, the costumes in that show whoever costumed that show, they're amazing because you have to replicate that painting.
Right. I was wondering where they got those tall hats and bonnets and things. It was, does anybody make those anymore? Did they have to make the hats in their own shop?
They
or-
must have. They must have because, like you said, you just can't go out and buy
Right.
them.
I haven't seen a hat
Yeah.
like that the closest I saw was that rock group that wore flower pots on their heads.
Oh, is it Devo?
Devo.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember what it was.
I know because we want to do a show that has to do with church ladies and their hats. And we want to get some interesting hats. And I've been calling around trying to find if there's any art schools.
We're
or design
talking
schools
church
that do
ladies
hats.
in their hats like that cartoon strip, right? You know that cartoon has the two little boys, and they're always going. There's very frequently they're in church, and they're making fun of the ladies in their hats.
Oh, I
on the
haven't
thing.
seen that one. I've got to look for it.
It's
Okay.
in the papers. It's very popular. They're all it's an African American strip,
Oh, okay.
and
And this book
Okay.
was it was two African American gentlemen did this pictorial book on church ladies in their hats, and then this African American actress created a storyline for it and turned it into a Broadway musical.
do you remember her name?
Oh gosh, she was in that thing I'll Fly Away, but the name of the musical is called Crowns.
Crime?
Crowns.
Oh, Crowns.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
So.
thinking some of the hats are fancy, but a
Something
crime.
I want to say Rebecca or something Taylor, but anyways. Anyways.
So where do you get the hats? That becomes the question,
yeah.
right? Well, I bet if you started looking around at like Salvation Army or Goodwill and stuff like, and their stores.
Yeah, but there's in the script they describe.
Oh, they're very specific.
Yes,
Huh?
and so that's why I called was it the fashion school, the fashion institute?
Yeah, yeah.
And I happened to get I emailed someone there, and I happened to get the president or something.
Oh, really?
Or something. And she says, "Oh no, we're going to have this workshop. We don't have a course yet. And we're thinking of it. Keep me, she says, keep in touch." She says, "Because we might have someone for you." Oh, great, that would be nice.
What's the art school over there on Huntington Avenue,
You mean
right by Longwood?
not Mass Art? You don't mean Mass Art?
Yeah, probably
Oh,
Mass
okay.
Art.
It's in what was originally the Boston State, which was Boston Normal School.
It's right across the way from the Isabella Stewart Gardner.
Oh, you mean the museum school?
No, museum school I think is near.
Louis Prang and
Yeah. Anyway, that school over there, which I think is probably Mass Art.
yeah. Okay.
They have not only a fashion design program there, but they have a
Write this down.
they have a costume design program
At Mass Art. Okay. I didn't
there.
know that.
So while you're checking, check with the people at Mass Art. Now, Michael and I,
Okay.
our missing member, Mike Sallin, and we used to do plays over there. Yeah, in the old days, back when we had real life plays. Anyway, back to Sister City while Susan writes here.
Yep. Sorry.
Oh, this is Susan Harrington here. I'm Arch O'Reilly. If you've stuck around this long, you probably know who we are. That would be said. Then the next event is Thursday, October 20th, which is the celebration and fundraiser. It's a taste of Brookline. We will have 7 or 8 Brookline restaurants at Temple Ohabai Shalom, and you can browse and go through. And so that's from 5:30 to 7. And following that, at 7:30 will be a free public forum with foreign correspondent Stephen Kinzer, moderated by Michael Dukakis. So we have the first event at 1550 Beacon Street on Sunday, Monday at the Coolidge Corner Theater, Thursday at Temple Ohabai Shalom. So that's what the Brookline Sister City is doing this week on things. Now, we have an election coming up,
Yes.
and
God help us.
we get sick and tired of talking about what everybody's talking about, which is the 2 candidates to be president. We have a number of ballot questions,
Yeah.
and one of them is question 2.
All right.
Question 2 is a proposition to lift the limits, in essence, to lift the limits on charter schools.
Yeah.
It doesn't lift them entirely immediately, but it would allow 12 new charter schools a year forever.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the people in favor of this have a $10 million budget, 90% of which comes from 5 millionaires in New York.
Yes.
I say in New York. One of them's in Arkansas.
Real close.
Which makes me wonder why they're interested in what kind of schools we go to. But you had an interesting run-in with a charter school teacher.
No, she wasn't
Oh.
a charter school teacher.
Oh,
That's
I
the
thought
funny
she
thing.
was. Oh,
No,
okay.
she's a retired librarian for Weston Public Schools.
Okay.
And she believes in charter schools because she thinks that, well, I told her I was against them because it gives people more time to be away from their children, less time for them to be engaged with their children. We're not here to be their everything and all. We're supposed to teach them, instruct them, and not be their social workers. She
Or their
thinks that,
daycare operators.
yeah, she thinks that teachers get paid too much and that that's what their job is. And I said, no, that's what's called slavery.
Do teachers get paid more than librarians?
Well, see, the thing is she was a librarian in the Weston Public School System. The Weston Public School System, this at one time, I don't know if it's still the case, they're the highest paid public school teachers in the United States of America. I said to her,
But
you
you don't know what the librarian's salary
No,
was.
but still, it's got to be better than a Brookline one, or a Boston one, or Chelsea or Lynn. And the thing is when you're a librarian, the kids come in, they smile, and even if they get a little rowdy, they get a book and they get the heck out. That teacher has them in her face. They're fighting and kicking and scratching and screaming, and sometimes, and you're not allowed to instruct because you're trying to play referee. You should come in with a striped shirt and a whistle.
Well, the thing is also it's relatively difficult to evaluate librarians.
Yeah.
And in one sense, the librarian is somehow responsible for every kid in the school, but at the same time, they're not responsible for any kid in the school.
Exactly.
So
They don't get a grade in the report card for library.
So we have a librarian who thinks that she's a teacher, and she was in favor of more charter schools.
Yes.
And when you pointed out that charter schools with their longer hours may be useful for parents who are working, a legitimate thing, but then it's very difficult on teachers who now are not available to go to any of their own children's after-school programs, who work late, who aren't home to get in time to get dinner on the table for their
right.
children, and that if you're a teacher and you have children, this is very bad for you. And she said,
That's their job.
she also said,
Yeah.
if they don't like it, they should get a different job,
Yeah.
right?
The thing is that, it's our Miss Dove is dead. Remember that movie where she sacrificed her life for the children? Well, she never married. She never had children. She never married. And she had no other life outside of that classroom. But she had parents that supported her.
Now, some of the people, maybe mainly me at the moment, Michael would also if he were here, are old enough to remember, to literally remember, it's not ancient history, folks. We remember that if you were a woman teacher and you got married, you were automatically fired.
Yeah. And you know what, though, Arch? It just wasn't teaching. My mother worked at a nursing home with someone, and when she was a young woman, when she met somebody who worked in the building that she worked at, she worked, some kind of business. They met and they dated and they married quietly. And they would leave their apartment at different times, and they would arrive to work at different times. They never spoke to one another at work, and it wasn't until she became with child, because you didn't get pregnant back then. When she was with child, that
And
she
now
left.
they were really bent out of shape because they thought she was unmarried.
That's right. So she had to, of course, then by this, because she could not be in that condition, in that state,
Right.
and work.
Right.
So-
Yes, in those days, if you were in that condition,
Yeah.
whether or not you were married, you got fired.
Yeah.
And it was also considered in those days that women didn't need to work. It was also considered that if they did work, they didn't need to make the same money as a man
That's right.
because they were presumed to have a man.
Yeah.
But you know, they weren't even generous enough to make exception for widows. You know, if you were widowed, you could go back to teaching provided you had no children. So this woman that you were talking to seems to be living in the 19th century. You know. Anyway, my major complaint about charter schools is that your local community has no control over them whatsoever. I mean, we have Brookline, to a large extent, has been built around its schools, you know, around quality teachers and good schools and everything else. Every time there's been the necessity of a vote to support the schools, the community has overwhelmingly supported them, which meant a lot of people who didn't have any kids in the schools were in favor.
Yeah.
Charter schools, we don't have any charter schools in
I
Brookline,
hope you never get one.
but charter schools are totally exempt from any input of the community.
The other thing too is the unions. They're trying to union bust. That's another thing.
Well, of course, that's their whole reason
Yeah.
for them. I mean, if it weren't for the effort to bust public employees' unions, and particularly teachers' unions, there wouldn't be any such thing as a charter school.
I really think that's what it is. They're trying to get rid of the unions.
And their ads that they're running with this millions of dollars that they have, just to me prove that you can hire some actor to say almost anything if you pay them. I want proof that this woman they've got saying, I'm a Massachusetts teacher and I approve of charter schools. I want proof that she's a Massachusetts teacher. Ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching rapidly the end of the fun show for today. It has been somewhat different in format than most of them, but I will not be here next week.
Right?
So whether we have 2 or 3 people is up to Michael.
No one will be here next week.
Huh?
No one will be here next week.
No one?
No one. It's a holiday.
It is?
Yes.
What holiday is that?
Columbus.
Oh, yes.
That's
well,
why I thought you meant it first when you said that.
No. I had no idea it was
Yeah.
Columbus Day. And Kira, I can speak for Kira.
Okay.
I don't acknowledge Columbus Day. He was.
Well, some places call it Indigenous. In Canada, don't they call it Indigenous Persons Day?
Oh,
Or
cool.
some states or
Cool.
some towns are
I
calling
like
it
it.
Indigenous Persons.
I like it. Anyway, so no one will be here next week, so I won't actually be missing a date.
Yeah.
And so we will see you in 2 weeks
On the 17th.
on the Fun Show here at Big TV. And remember, only an idiot would vote for Donald Trump for President of the United States.
Remember that. Yeah. Remember that, children?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Anyone who has the audacity to even consider voting for Donald Trump should find another country to live in.
And if you can, watch on YouTube the SNL debate this
Oh, the
weekend.
debate? Yes. With Baldwin and...
Yes.
Yes. Who
And
did a
it-
very good job.
it was very,
All
very
right. Good night, everybody. Good night.